Hello, 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 greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear scholars, to the study. Hello there, Julian20. Welcome. Hello there, it's Mr. Smarties. Welcome to the study. It's wonderful to have a new face here. I'm glad to see you here. I am, excuse me, I'm coming off a little bit of energy right now. Hello there, and I see in our chat also, I see Kintron is here. Welcome. Hello there, Firefly. Hello there, Dr. Zadium, and hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome, one and all. Yes, as you might be able to tell, I am back from my little journey. Mr. Smarties, I'm from Sophia. Oh, good to see you then. I'm glad you could come. Sophia's a wonderful reading VTuber, and I'm glad to have someone who appreciates her. Dr. Zadium, hi, welcome, my dear friend, welcome. Ah, I had a little journey these past few days, and it was quite a lot of fun. I did quite a few things. Horace and I had so much enjoyment in our little trip. I may or may not have purchased additional books for the study. Oh dear, I can't help myself. But I'm glad to be back with all you wonderful scholars. You are what makes this stream possible, and you make every day wonderful. Hello there, Firefly. Welcome back. I'm glad to see you here. And before I forget, I must thank our newest scholar, Sun Chaser, I believe is how it's pronounced. Welcome, and thank you for the follow. You make you all make every day a wonderful time. So, my dear scholars, today we are going to be continuing our reading of The Sea Fairies by L. Frank Baum. For those who are new here, oh, I should probably introduce myself properly for all those new viewers. I am Matsu Quinox, Omniversal Interdimensional Librarian. I am a reading VTuber, as well as I do gaming as well, but I mostly do readings, and tonight is one such reading. For those of you who were not here last time, so what happened is Trot and Captain Bill met the met mermaids, and thanks to the mermaids' magic, they were allowed to go under the water. They met the Queen of the Mermaids, who wanted to dissuade Captain Bill from his belief that all mermaids are terrible people. Oh, that Captain Bill. Mm. But anyway, we are going to be continuing with the next few chapters. Mr. Smarty's librarian, nice. Aw, thank you. Oh, we have a new follower. Kinney Linnae, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome, my dear scholar. Welcome to the study. I'm so happy to have you here, and I hope you can enjoy. Oh, oh, hello there. Glad to see you, Kin Linnae. Ah, it's good to see you here, and I hope you enjoy your time here in the study. I should probably open this bit of water because I will need hydration for tonight's stream. For those who are not familiar with my reading streams, oh, thank you, Kinlane. I will need all the water I can get. For those who are not familiar with, oh my goodness, Mr. Smarties, that's a lot of water. For those who are not familiar with my reading streams, I don't simply read the stories. I do the voices as well. So expect something a little more of a dramatic reading than most straight reading streams. So then, my dear scholars, are you ready to journey back under the sea and see what Captain Bill and Trot are up to? Mr. Smarty's dramatic sounds like my life. Oh, I hope in a good way. I hope in a good way. Yulian 20, I am ready. Can you lay nay? Yeah, that's okay. All right. Well, if everyone is ready, we will begin with our reading of The Sea Fairies by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 5. The Sea Serpent. Just then, Trot happened to look up at the glass roof and saw a startling sight. A big head with a face surrounded by stubby gray whiskers was poised just over them, and the head was connected with a long curved body that looked much like a sewer pipe. "Oh, there is King Anko," said the Queen, following the child's gaze. "Open a door and let him in, Clea, for I suppose our old friend is anxious to see the Earth people." Private Maverick. Wait, isn't this the same author of the Oz series? Yes, it is. L. Frank Baum wrote several books that weren't set in the Oz series, but are set in like the greater Oz universe. This is one of them. He wrote two involving Little Trot and Cap'n Bill, after which he moved them into the Oz series. Particularly. "Won't he hurt us?" asked the little girl with a shiver of fear. "Who? Anko? Oh, no, my dear. We are very fond of the sea serpent, who is king of this ocean, although he does not rule the mermaids. Old Anko is a very agreeable fellow, as you will soon discover." "Can he talk?" asked Trot. "Yes, indeed. And can we understand what he says?" "Perfectly," replied the Queen. "I have given you power, while you remain here, to understand the language of every inhabitant of the sea." "That's nice," said Trot gratefully. The Princess Cleo swam slowly to one of the walls of the throne room, where, at a wave of her hand, a round hole appeared in the coral. The sea serpent at once observed this opening, and the head left the roof of the glass only to reappear presently at the round hole. Through this he slowly crawled, until his head was just beneath the throne of Queen Aquareine, who said to him, "Good morning, your Majesty. I hope you are quite well." "Quite well, thank your Majesty," answered Anko, and then he turned to the strangers. "I suppose these are the Earth folks you were expecting?" "Yes," returned the Queen. "The girl is named Mary, and the man Cap'n Bill." While the sea serpent looked at the visitors, they ventured to look at him. He certainly was a queer creature, yet Trot decided he was not at all frightful. His head was round as a ball, but his ears were sharp pointed and had tassels at the end of them. His nose was flat and his mouth very wide indeed, but his eyes were blue and gentle in expression. The white stubby hairs that surrounded his face were not thick, like a beard, but scattered and scraggly. From the head the long brown body of the sea serpent extended to the hole in the coral wall, which was just big enough to admit it, and how much more of the body remained outside, the child could not tell. On the back of the body were several fins, which made the creature look more like an eel than a serpent. "The girl is young, and the man is old," said King Anko in a soft voice, "but I'm quite sure Cap'n Bill isn't as old as I am." "How old are ye?" asked the sailor. "I can't say exactly. I can remember several thousands of years back, but beyond that my memory fails me. How's your memory, Cap'n Bill?" "You've got me beat," was the reply. I'll give in. Yeah, it's hard to do Cap'n Bill's voice. "I'll give in that you're older than I am." This seemed to please the sea serpent. "Are you well?" he asked. Pretty fair, said Cap'n Bill. How's yourself? Oh, I'm very well, thank you, answered Anko. I never remember to have had a pain but 3 times in my life. The last time was when Julius Sneezer was on Earth. You mean Julius Caesar, said Trot, correcting him. No, I mean Julius Sneezer, insisted the sea serpent. That was his real name. Well, that's interesting. Sneezer. They called him Caesar sometimes, just because he took everything he could lay hands on. I ought to know because I saw him when he was alive. Did you see him when he was alive, Cap'n Bill? I reckon not, admitted the sailor. That time I had a toothache, continued Anko, but I got a lobster to pull the tooth with his claw, so the pain was soon over. Did it hurt to pull it? Asked Trot. Hurt? Exclaimed the sea serpent, groaning at the recollection. My dear, those creatures have been called lobsters ever since. The second pain I had way back in the time of Never Could Never. Oh, oh, excuse me a second, my dear scholars. How do I do this? I can't remember how to delete these things. Yeah. Ah, Kintron bots have been out in full force today. This is the fifth one I've seen at least. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I can't remember how you actually remove these things. I'll just leave it be for now. Oh, I suppose you mean Nebuchadnezzar. Kintron, I reported it for you. Oh, thank you, Kintron. Thank you so much. Oh, Kinelani. I'm sorry, Kinelani. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Thank you for doing that. Oh, I apologize, Kinelani. Thank you for reporting it. Uh, I'm so sorry. It's much appreciated. Oh, I suppose you mean Nebuchadnezzar, said Trot. Do you call him that now? Asked the sea serpent, as if surprised. He used to be called Never Could Never when he was alive, but this new way of spelling seems to get everything mixed up. Nebuchadnezzar doesn't mean anything at all, it seems to me. It means he ate grass, said the child. Oh, no, he didn't, declared the sea serpent. Kinilei stinky bots. Yeah, they are irritating. They are very annoying, declared the sea serpent. He was the first to discover that lettuce was good to eat, and he became very fond of it. The people may have called it grass, but they were wrong. I ought to know, because I was alive when Never Could Never lived. Were you alive then? No, said Trot. The pain I had then, remarked Anko, was caused by a kink in my tail about 300 feet from the end. There was an old octopus who did not like me, and so he tied a knot in my tail when I wasn't looking. What did you do? Asked Cap'n Bill. Well, first I transformed the octopus into a jellyfish, and then I waited for the tide to turn. When my tail was untied, the pain stopped. I I don't understand that, said Trot, somewhat bewildered. Thank you, my dear, replied the sea serpent in a grateful voice. People who are always understood are very common. You are sure to respect those who can't understand, for you feel that perhaps they know more than you do. About how long do you happen to be? Inquired Cap'n Bill. Oh, when last measured, I was 7,482 feet, 5 inches and a quarter. I'm not sure about the quarter, but the rest is probably correct. Adam measured me when Cain was a baby. Where's the rest of you then? Asked Trot. Safe at home, I hope, and coiled up in my parlor, answered the sea serpent. When I go out, I usually take along only what is needed. It saves a lot of bother, and I can always find my way back in the darkest night by just coiling up the part that has been away. Do you like to be a sea serpent? Inquired the child. Yes, for I'm king of my ocean, and there is no other sea serpent to imagine he is just as good as I am. I have two brothers who live in other oceans, but one is 7 inches shorter than I am, and the other several feet shorter. It's curious to talk about feet when we haven't any feet, isn't it? Seems so, acknowledged Trot. I feel I have much to be proud of, continued Anko in a dreamy tone. My great age, my undisputed sway, and my exceptional length. I don't believe I'd care to live so long, remarked Cap'n Bill thoughtfully. So long as 7,482 feet, 5 inches and a quarter? Asked the sea serpent. No, I mean so many years, replied the sailor. But what can one do if one happens to be a sea serpent? Anko inquired. There is nothing in the sea that can hurt me, and I cannot commit suicide because we have no carbolic acid or firearms or gas to turn on, so it isn't a matter of choice, and I'd about as soon be alive as dead. It does not seem quite so monotonous, you know, but I guess I've stayed about long enough, so I'll go home to dinner, and come and see me when you have time. Thank you, said Trot, and Merla added, I'll take you over to His Majesty's palace when we go out, and let you see how he lives. Yes, do, said Anko, and then he slowly slid out of the hole, which immediately closed behind him, leaving the coral wall as solid as before. Oh! exclaimed Trot. King Anko forgot to tell us what the third pane was about. So he did, said Cap'n Bill. We must ask him about that when we see him. But I guess the old boy memory is failing, and he can't be depended on for particulars. Uh, Pages are sticking. Drink of water. Chapter 6. Exploring the Ocean. Some of you might have known, or some of you who were here last time, a lot of these chapters are very short. So we will be getting quite a few chapters in tonight, I think. The queen now requested her guests to recline upon couches, that they might rest themselves from their long swim, and talk more at their ease. So the girl and the sailor allowed themselves to float downward, until they rested their bodies on two of the couches nearest the throne, which were willingly vacated for them by the mermaids, who had occupied them until then. The visitors soon found themselves answering a great many questions about their life on the earth, for although the queen had said she kept track of what was going on the land, there were many details of human life in which all the mermaids seemed greatly interested. During the conversation, several sea maids came swimming into the room, bearing trays of sea apples and other fruit, which they first offered to the queen, and then passed the refreshments around to the company assembled. Trot and Cap'n Bill each took some, and the little girl found the fruits delicious to eat, as they had a richer flavor than any that grew upon land. Queen Aquareine was much pleased when the old sailor asked for more, but Merla warned him dinner would soon be served, and he must take care not to spoil his appetite for that meal. Our dinner is at noon, for we have to cook in the middle of the day, when the sun is shining. Cook? Cried Trot. Why, you can't build a fire in the water, can you? We have no need of fires, was the reply. The glass roof of our kitchen is so curved that it concentrates the heat of the sun's rays, which are then hot enough to cook anything we wish. But how do you get along if the day is cloudy and the sun doesn't shine? Inquired the little girl. Then we use the hot springs that bubble up in another part of the palace, Merla answered. But the sun is the best to cook by. I will hand it to Frank Baum. He has thought out a lot of how life might work under the sea. So it was no surprise to Trot when, about noon, dinner was announced, and all the mermaids, headed by their queen and their guests, swam into another spacious room where a great lawn table was laid. The dishes were of polished gold and dainty cut glass, and the cloth and napkins of fine gossamer. Around the table were ranged rows of couches for the mermaids to recline upon as they ate. Only the nobility and favorites of Queen Aquareine were invited to partake of this repast, for Clea explained that tables were set for the other mermaids in different parts of the numerous palaces. Trot wondered who would serve the meal, but her curiosity was soon satisfied when several large lobsters came sliding into the room, backward, bearing in their claws trays loaded with food. Each of these lobsters had a golden band around its neck to show it was the slave of the mermaids. Okay, that's a little bit dark there. A little bit not nice. These curious waiters were fussy creatures, and Trot found much amusement in watching their odd motions. Oh, hello there, Sophia! Welcome, welcome, welcome to the stream! We are on Chapter 6. We just passed Chapter 5, where they met King Anko. Glad to have you here! They were so spry and excitable that at times they ran against one another and upset the platters of foods, after which they began to scold and argue as to whose fault it was, until one of the mermaids quietly rebuked them and asked them to be more quiet and more careful. The queen's guests had no cause to complain of the dinner provided. First the lobsters served bowls of turtle soup, which proved hot and deliciously flavored. Then came salmon steaks fried in fish oil, with a fungus bread that tastes much like field mushrooms. Oysters, clams, soft-shelled crabs, and various preparations of seafoods followed. I love seafood, so this is making me quite hungry. The salad was a delicate leaf from some seaweed that Trot thought was much nicer than lettuce. Several courses were served, and the lobsters changed the plates with each course, chattering and scolding as they worked, and as Trot said, doing everything backwards in their nervous, fussy way. Firefly, we had salmon tonight. Oh, wonderful! Wonderful. Salmon is so good. Horace loves salmon, actually. Is that right? I've been meaning to get my hands on some salmon, but unfortunately, we just haven't been. We've been too busy, and the kitchen's gone missing again, so we haven't been able to get any good food for a while now. Many of the things offered them to eat were unknown to the visitors, and the child was suspicious of some of them. But Cap'n Bill asked no questions and ate everything offered him, so Trot decided to follow his example. Certain it is they found the meal very satisfying, and evidently there was no danger of their being hungry while they remained the guests of the mermaids. When the fruits came, Trot thought that must be the last course of the big dinner, but following the fruits were ice creams frozen into the shapes of flowers. "How funny," said the child, "to be eating ice cream at the bottom of the sea." "Why does that surprise you?" inquired the queen. "I can't see where you get the ice to freeze it," Trot replied. "It is brought to us from the icebergs that float in the northern parts of the ocean," exclaimed Merla. "Of course, Trot. You orter thought o' that, I did," said Cap'n Bill. The little girl was glad there was no more to eat, for she was ashamed to feel that she had eaten every morsel she could. Her only excuse for being so greedy was that everything tasted just splendid, as she told the queen. Kintron Baum clearly wrote the stories knowing children would ask these questions. That is true. That is true. It does seem like it's written to answer every single question that a child might ask about how a mermaid might live under the water. "And now," said Aquamarine, "I will send you out for a swim with Merla, who will show you some of the curious sights of our sea. You need not go far this afternoon, and when you return, we will have another interesting talk together." So the blonde mermaid led Trot and Cap'n Bill outside the palace walls, where they found themselves in the pretty flower gardens. "I'd feel all right, mate, if I could have a smoke," remarked the old sailor to the child. "But that's a thing as can't be did here in the water." "Why not?" asked Merlot, who overheard him. "A pipe has to be lighted, and a match wouldn't burn," he replied. "Try it," suggested the mermaid. "I do not mind your smoking at all, if it will give you pleasure."
"It's a bad habit I've got, and I'm too old to break myself of it,"
said Cap'n Bill. Then he felt in the big pockets of his coat and took out a pipe and a bag of tobacco. After he had carefully filled his pipe, rejoicing in the fact that the tobacco was not at all wet, he took out his matchbox and struck a light. The match burned brightly, and soon the sailor was puffing the smoke from his pipe in great contentment. The smoke ascended through the water in the shape of bubbles, and Trot wondered what anyone who happened to be floating upon the surface of the ocean would think to see smoke coming from the water.
"Well, I find I can smoke all right," remarked Cap'n Bill, "but it bothers me to understand why."
"It is because of the air space existing between the water and everything you have about you," explained Merla. "But now, if you will come this way, I will take you to visit some of our neighbors." They passed over the carpet of sea flowers, the gorgeous blossoms swaying on their stems as the motion of the people in the water above them disturbed their repose. And presently the three entered the dense shrubbery surrounding the palaces. They had not proceeded far when they came to a clearing among the bushes, and here Merla paused. Trot and Cap'n Bill paused too, for floating in the clear water was a group of beautiful shapes that the child thought looked like mold of wine jelly. They were round as a dinner plate, soft and transparent, but tinted in such lovely hues that no artist's brush has ever been able to imitate them. Some were deep sapphire blue, others rose pink, still others a delicate topaz color. They seemed to have neither heads, eyes, nor ears, yet it was easy to see they were alive and able to float in any direction they wished to go. In shape they resembled inverted flower pots, with the upper edges fluted, and from the centers floated what seemed to be bouquets of flowers. "How pretty!" exclaimed Trot, enraptured by the sight. "Yes, this is a rare variety of jellyfish," replied Merla. The creatures are not so delicate as they appear, and live for a long time unless they get too near the surface and the waves wash them ashore. After watching the jellyfish a few moments, they followed Merla through the grove, and soon a low chant, like that of an Indian song, fell upon their ears. It was a chorus of many small voices, and grew louder as they swam on. Presently a big rock rose suddenly before them from the bottom of the sea, rearing its steep side far up into the water overhead, and this rock was thickly covered with tiny shells that clung fast to its surface. The chorus they heard appeared to come from these shells, and Merla said to her companions, "These are the singing barnacles. They are really very amusing, and if you listen carefully, you can hear what they say." So Trot and Cap'n Bill listened, and this was what the barnacles sang. And yes, my dear scholars, we have some songs we can sing in this book. I'll try and put some music to the words. I can't guarantee it will be perfect. Thank you, Kidron. We went to Topsy-Turvy Land to see a man o' war, and we were much attached to it because we simply were. We found an anchorite within the mud upon the lay, for the ghost of Jonah's whale he ran away and went to sea. Oh, it was awful, it was unlawful, we rallied round the flag in several millions. They couldn't shake us, they had to take us, so the halibut and cod they danced cotillions. "What does it mean?" asked Trot. "I suppose they refer to the way barnacles have of clinging to ships," replied Merla. "But usually their songs mean nothing at all. The little barnacles haven't many brains, so we usually find their songs quite stupid." Julian 20, bravo! Thank you. Thank you. "Do they write comic operas?" "Do they write comic operas?" asked the child. "I think not," answered the mermaid. "They seem to like the songs themselves," remarked Cap'n Bill. "Oh, yes, they sing all day long, but it never matters to them whether their songs mean anything or not." Excuse me. "Let us go in this direction and visit some other sea people." So they swam away from the barnacle-covered rock, and Trot heard the last chorus as she slowly followed their conductor. The barnacles were singing, "Oh, very well, then oh, very well, then I hear the curfew. Please go away, come some other day. Goliath tussles with Samson's muscles, yet the muscles never fight in Oyster Bay." "It's just nonsense," said Trot scornfully. "Why don't they sing Eddie Laurie or Home Sweet Home, or else keep quiet?" "Why, if they were quiet," replied Marla, "they wouldn't be singing barnacles." They got a point there. They now came to one of the avenues which led from the sea garden out into the broad ocean, and here two swordfishes were standing guard. "Is all quiet?" Merla asked them.
"Just as usual, your highness," replied one of the guards. "Murmur was sick this morning and grunted dreadfully, but he's better now and has gone to sleep. King Anko has been stirring around some, but is now taking his after-dinner nap. I think it will be perfectly safe for you to swim out for a while if you wish."
"Who's Murmacubble?" asked Trot as they passed out into deep water. "He's the sea pig," replied Merla. "I am glad he is asleep, for now we won't meet him." "Don't you like him?" inquired Trot. "Oh, he complains so bitterly of everything that he bores us," Merla answered. "Murma, yeah. Murmur is never contented or happy for a single minute. If you're curious, sea pigs are a thing. They come from the Middle Ages, I believe, in terms of nautical folklore. I've seen people like that, said Cap'n Bill with a nod of his head, and they has a way of upsetting the happiest folks they meet. Oh, I know a few people like that. Look out! Suddenly cried the mermaid. Look out for your fingers! Here are the snapping eels! Who? What? Asked Trot anxiously. And now they were in the midst of a cluster of wriggling, darting eels, which sported all around them in the water with marvelous activity. Yes, look out for your fingers and your nose. Oh, that's the eels. Sorry.
Yes, look out for your fingers and your noses,
Said one of the eels, making a dash for Cap'n Bill. At first the sailor was tempted to put out a hand and push the creature away, but remembering that his fingers would thus be exposed, he remained quiet, and the eel snapped harmlessly just before his face, and then darted away. Stop it, said Merla. Stop it this minute, or I'll report your impudence to Aquamarine.
Oh, who cares?
Shouted the eels.
We're not afraid of the mermaids.
She'll stiffen you all up again, as she did once before, said Merla, if you try to hurt the Earth people.
Are these Earth people?
Asked one, and then they all stopped their play and regarded Trot and Cap'n Bill with their little black eyes.
The old pollywog looks something like King Anko,
Said one of them. I'm not a pollywog, answered Cap'n Bill angrily. I'm a respectable sailor man, and I'll have you treat me decent, or I'll know why.
Sailor,
Said another.
that means to float on the water, not in it. What are you doing down here?
I'm just visiting, answered Cap'n Bill. He is the guest of our queen, said Merla, and so is this little girl. If you do not behave nicely to them, you will surely be sorry. Private Maverick. I am what I am. I can't do Popeye's voice, but I would if I could,
Oh, that's all right,
replied one of the biggest eels, wriggling around in a circle and then snapping at a companion, which was quickly snapped out of his way.
we know how to be polite to company as well as the mermaids. We won't hurt them. Come on, fellows, let's go scare old Mermicubble,
Cried another, and then in a flash they all darted away and left our friends to themselves. Trot was greatly relieved. I don't like eels, she said. They are more mischievous than harmful, replied Merla, but I do not care much for them myself. No, added Cap'n Bill, they ain't respectful. Personally, I think eels are delicious. One of my favorite seafoods ever are eels. Yum, yum, yum. Excuse me, I gotta adjust myself a little bit. Firefly, they're delicious with barbecue. Oh, yes, they are. They are so good with barbecue. Chapter 7. The Aristocratic Codfish. The three swam slowly along, quite enjoying the cool depths of the water. Every little while they met with some strange creature, or one that seemed strange to the Earth people, for although Trot and Cap'n Bill had seen many kinds of fish, after they had been caught and pulled from the water, that was very different from meeting them in their own element. Face to face, as Trot expressed it. Now that the various fishes were swimming around free and unafraid in their deep sea home, They were quite different from the gasping, excited creatures struggling at the end of a fish line or flopping from a net. Before long they came upon a group of large fishes lying lazily near the bottom of the sea. They were a dark color upon their backs and silver underneath, but not especially pretty to look at. The fishes made no effort to get out of Merla's way and remained motionless, except for the gentle motion of their fins and gills. "Here," said the mermaid, pausing, "is the most aristocratic family of fish in all the sea." "What are they?" asked the girl. "Codfish," was the reply. "Their only fault is that they are too haughty and foolishly proud of their pedigree." Overhearing this speech, one codfish said to another in a very dignified tone of voice, "What insolence! What insolence! Isn't it?" replied the other. "There ought to be a law to prevent these common mermaids from discussing their superiors." "My sakes!" said Trot, astonished. "How stuck up they are, aren't they?" For a moment the group of fishes stared at her solemnly. Then one of them remarked in a disdainful manner, "Come, my dears, let us leave these vulgar creatures." "I'm not as vulgar as you are," exclaimed Trot, much offended by this speech. "Where I came from, we only eat codfish when there's nothing else in the house to eat."
"How absurd!" observed one of the creatures arrogantly. "Eat codfish, indeed!" said another in a lofty manner.
"Yes, and you're pretty salty, too, I can tell you. At home you're nothing but a pickup," said Trot.
"Dear me!" exclaimed the first fish which had spoken. "Must we stand this insulting language, and from a person to whom we have never been introduced?"
"I don't need any introduction," replied the girl. "I've eaten you, and you always make me thirsty."
Merla laughed merrily at this, and the codfish said with much dignity, "Come, fellow aristocrats, let us go."
"Never mind, we're going ourselves," announced Merla, and followed by her guests, the pretty mermaid swam away.
"I've heard tell of codfish aristocratry," said Cap'n Bill, "but I never knowed 'zactly what it meant afore."
"They just made me mad with all their airs," observed Trot, "so I gave 'em a piece of my mind." "Good for you, Trot, good for you."
"You surely did, mate," said the sailor, "but I ain't sure they understand what they're like when they're salted and hung up in the pantry. Folks generally get stuck up, 'cause they don't know theirselves like other folks knows 'em."
"We are near Crabville now," declared Merla. "Shall we visit the crabs and see what they are doing?" "Yes, let's," replied Trot. "The crabs are lots of fun. I've often caught them among the rocks at the shore and laughed at the way they act. Wasn't it funny at dinner time to see the way they slid around with the plates?"
Kind of morbid there.
"Those were not crabs, but lobster and crawfish," remarked the mermaid. "They are very intelligent creatures, and by making them serve us we save ourselves much household work."
Again, kinda, yeah, not a great thing to talk about there.
"Of course they are awkward and provoke us sometimes, but no servants are perfect, it is said, so we get along with ours as well as we can." "They're all right," protested the child, "even if they did tip things over once in a while. But it is easy to work in a sea palace, I'm sure, because there's no dusting or sweeping to be done.
or scrubbing," added Cap'n Bill.
"The crabs," said Merla, "are second cousins to the lobsters, although much smaller in size. There are many families or varieties of crabs, and so many of them live in one place near here that we call it Crabville. I think you'll enjoy seeing these little creatures in their native haunts." They now approached a kelp bed, the straight thin stems of the kelp running far upward to the surface of the water. Here and there on the stalks were leaves, but Trot thought that the growing kelp looked much like sticks of macaroni, except they were a rich red-brown color. It was beyond the kelp, which they had to push aside as they swam through it, so thickly did it grow, that they came to a higher level, a sort of plateau on the ocean's bottom. It was covered with scattered rocks of all sizes, which appeared to have broken off from big shelving rocks they observed nearby. The place they entered seemed like one of the rocky canyons you often see upon the earth. "Here live the fiddler crabs," said Merla, "but we must have taken them by surprise. It is so quiet." Even as she spoke, was a stirring and scrambling among the rocks, and soon scores of light green crabs were gathered before the visitors. The crabs bore fiddles of all sorts and shapes in their claws, and one big fellow carried a leader's baton. The latter crab climbed upon a flat rock, and in an excited voice called out,
"Ready! Now, ready, good fiddlers! We'll play number 19. Hail to the mermaids! Ready? Take aim! Fire away!"
At this command every crab began scraping at his fiddle as hard as he could, and the sounds were so shrill and unmusical that Trout wondered when they would begin to play a tune. But they never did. It was one regular mix-up of sounds from beginning to end. When the noise finally stopped, the leader turned to his visitors, and waving his baton toward them, asked,
"Well, what do you think of that?"
"Not much," said Trot honestly. "What's it all about?"
"I composed it myself," said the fiddler crab, "but it's highly classical, I admit. All really great music is an acquired taste."
"I don't like it," remarked Cap'n Bill. "It might do all right to stir up a racket New Year's Eve, but to call that screeching music—" Just then the crabs started fiddling again, harder than ever, and as it promised to be a long performance, they left the little creatures scraping away at their fiddles, as if for dear life, and swam along the rocky canyon, until, on turning a corner, they came upon a new and different scene. There were crabs here too, many of them, and they were performing the queerest antics imaginable. Some were building themselves into a pyramid, each standing on edge, with the biggest and strongest ones at the bottom. When the crabs were 5 or 6 rows high, they would all tumble over, still clinging to one another, and having reached the ground, they would separate and commence to build the pyramid over again. Others were chasing one another around in a circle, always moving backward or sideways, and trying to play leapfrog as they went. Still others were swinging on slight branches of seaweed, or turning cartwheels, or indulging in similar antics. Merla and the Earth People watched the busy little creatures for some time before they were themselves observed, but finally Trot gave a laugh when one crab fell on its back and began frantically waving its legs to get right side up again. At the sound of her laughter, they all stopped their play and came towards the visitors in a flock, looking up at them with their bright eyes in a most comical way. And the copy of the book I have here is actually missing an illustration here, or at least apparently it has just the words illustration in brackets on the page. Oh dear.
Welcome home,
Cried one as he turned a back somersault and knocked another crab open.
What's the difference between a mermaid and a tadpole?
Asked another in a loud voice and without a pause contained.
Why, one drops its tail and the other holds on to it.
These, said Merla, are the clown crabs. They are very silly things, as you may already have discovered, but for a short time they are rather amusing. One tires of them very soon. They're funny, said Trot, laughing again. Sophia, oh my God, you did that first voice, and I thought someone else was reading with you. I'll take that as a compliment. Honestly, I'll take that as a compliment. That voice really did strain my vocal cords though a little bit. They're funny, said Trot, laughing again. It's almost as good as a circus. I don't think they would make me tired, but then I'm not a mermaid. The clown crabs had now formed a row in front of them.
Mr. Johnson,
Asked one.
why is a mermaid like an automobile? I don't know, Tommy Blimken,
Answered a big crab in the middle of the row.
Why do you think a mermaid is like an automobile? Because they both get tired,
Said Tommy Blimken. Then all the crabs laughed, and Tommy seemed to laugh louder than the rest. Oh, now I got that joke. That's a terrible joke. And it's full of puns, of course. Puns, my greatest natural enemy. How do the crabs in the sea know anything about automobiles? Asked Trot. Why, Tommy Blinken and Harry Hustle were both captured once by humans and put in an aquarium, answered the mermaid. But one day they climbed out and escaped, finally making their way back to the sea and home again. So they are quite traveled, you see, and great favorites among the crabs. While they were on land, they saw a great many curious things, and so I suppose they saw automobiles.
We did! We did!
Cried Harry Hustle, an awkward crab with one big claw and one little one.
And we saw earth people with legs. Awfully funny they were. And animals called horses with legs. And other creatures with legs. And the people cover themselves with the queerest things. They even wear feathers and flowers on their heads and...
Oh, we know all about that, said Trot. We live on the earth ourselves. Kintron, puns. Yeah, puns. I need a lot of water for this part. The things I do for my dear scholars.
Well, you're lucky to get off from it and into the good water,
said the crab.
I nearly died on the earth. It was so stupid, dry and airy. But the circus was great. They held the performance right in front of the aquarium where we lived. And Tom and I learned all the tricks of the tumblers. Hi, come on, fellows, and show the earth people what you can do.
Sophia Wogglebug! No! No Wogglebug. No Wogglebug. No Wogglebug. At this, the crabs began performing their antics again, but they did the same things over and over again. So Cap'n Bill and Trot soon tired, as Merla said they would, and decided they had seen enough of the crab circus. So they proceeded to swim farther up the rocky canyon, and near its upper end they came to a lot of conch shells lying upon the sandy bottom. A funny-looking crab was sticking his head out from each of these shells. Here are the hermit crabs, said one of the mermaids. They steal their shells and live in them, so no enemies can attack them. Don't they get lonesome? Asked Trot. Perhaps so, my dear, but they do not seem to mind being lonesome. They are great cowards, and think if they can but protect their lives, There is nothing else to care for. Unlike the jolly crabs we have just left, the hermits are cross and unsociable.
Oh, keep quiet and go away,
Said one of the hermit crabs in a grumpy voice.
no one wants mermaids around here.
Then every crab withdrew its head into its shell, and our friends saw them no more. They're not very polite, observed Trot, following the mermaid as Merla swam upward into the middle water.
I know now why cross people are called crabbed,
said Cap'n Bill.
they've got disposition just like these 'ere hermit crabs.
Presently they came upon a small flock of mackerel, and noticed that the fishes seemed much excited. When they saw the mermaid, they cried out, "Oh, Merla, what do you think? Our Flippity has just gone to glory!" "When?" asked the mermaid. "Just now," one replied. "We were lying in the water, talking quietly together, when a spinning shiny thing came along, and our dear Flippity ate it. Then he went shooting up to the top of the water and gave a flop and went to glory. Isn't it splendid, Merla?" "Poor Flippity," sighed the mermaid. "I'm sorry, for he was the prettiest and nicest mackerel in your whole flock." "What does it mean?" asked Trot. "How did Flippity go to glory?" "Why, he was caught by a hook and pulled out of the water into some boat," Merla explained. "But these poor stupid creatures do not understand that, and when one of them is jerked out of the water and disappears, they have an idea he has gone to glory, which means to them some unknown but beautiful sea." "I've often wondered," said Trot, "why fishes are foolish enough to bite on hooks."
They must know enough to know their hooks,
added Cap'n Bill musingly. "Oh, hello there, Kurasama. Welcome. Thank you for the raid. We are reading The Sea Fairies by L. Frank Baum." "Oh, they do," replied Merla. "I've seen fishes gather around a hook and look at it carefully for a long time. They well know it is a hook, and that if they bite the bait upon it, they will be pulled out of the water. But they are curious to know what will happen to them afterwards, and think it means happiness instead of death. So finally, one takes the hook and disappears, and the others never know what becomes of him." "Why don't you tell him the truth?" asked Trot. "Oh, hello there, Crusader Corrupted. Thank you for the raid. Welcome, welcome. We're reading The Sea Fairies." "Oh, we do. The mermaids have warned them many times, but it does no good at all. The fish are stupid creatures."
but I wish I was Flippity,
said one of the mackerels, staring at Trot with his big round eyes.
he went to glory before I could eat the hook myself."
"You're lucky," answered the child. "Flippity will be fried in a pan for someone's dinner. You wouldn't like that, would you?"
"Flippity has gone to glory,"
said another, and then they swam away in haste to tell the news to all they met. Sophia Matsu's voice acting is top tier today. Oh, you're gonna make me blush. Thank you. "I've never heard of anything so foolish," remarked Trot, as they swam slowly on through the clear blue water. "Yes, it is very foolish, and very sad," answered Merla. "But if the fishes were wise, men could not catch them for food, and many poor people on your earth make their living by fishing." "It seems wicked to catch such pretty things," said the child. "I do not think so," Merla replied laughingly, "for they were born to become food for someone, And men are not the only ones that eat fishes. Many creatures of the sea feed upon them. They even eat one another at times. And if none were ever destroyed, they would soon become so numerous that they would clog the waters of the ocean, and leave no room for the rest of us. So after all, perhaps it is just as well they are thoughtless and foolish. Presently they came to some round balls that looked much like balloons in shape and were gaily colored. They floated quietly in the water, and Trot inquired what they were. "Balloon fish," answered Merla. "They are helpless creatures, but have little spikes all over them, so their enemies dare not bite them for fear of getting pricked." Trot found the balloon fish quite interesting. They had little dots for eyes and dots for mouths, but she could see no noses, and their fins and tails were very small. "They catch these fishes in the South Sea Islands and make lanterns of 'em," said Cap'n Bill. "They first skin 'em, and sew the skin up again to let it dry, and then they put candles inside, and the light shines through the dried skin." Many other curious sights they saw in the ocean that afternoon, and both Cap'n Bill and Trot thoroughly enjoyed their glimpse of sea life. At last, Merla said it was time to return to the palace, for which she claimed they had not at any time been very far distant. "We must prepare for dinner, as it will soon begin to grow dark in the water," continued their conductor. So they swam leisurely back to the groves that surrounded the palaces, and as they entered the gardens, the sun sank, and deep shadows began to form in the ocean depths. Get a little bit of water here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Chapter 8: A Banquet Under the Water. The palaces of the mermaids were all aglow with lights as they approached them, and Trot was amazed at the sight. "Where did the lamps come from?" she asked their guide, wonderingly. "They are not lamps, my dear," replied Merla, much amused at this suggestion. "We use electrical lights in our palaces, and have done so for thousands of years, long before the Earth people knew of electric lights." "But where do you get 'em?" inquired Cap'n Bill, who was as much astonished as the girl. "From a transparent jellyfish, which naturally emits a strong and beautiful electric light," was the answer. "We have many hundreds of them in our palaces, as you will presently see." Their way was now lighted by small phosphorescent creatures scattered about the sea gardens, and which Merla informed them were, I'm gonna try and read this correctly, Hyal- Hyalia, or sea glowworms. Someone with a better grasp of oceanography can probably pronounce that much better than I can. I apologize, my dear scholars. But their light was dim when compared to that of the electric jellyfish, which they found placed in clusters upon the ceilings of all the rooms of the palaces, rendering them light as day. Trot watched these curious creatures with delight, for delicately colored lights ran around their bodies in every direction, in a continuous stream, shedding splendid rays throughout the vast halls. A group of mermaids met the visitors in the hall of the main palace, and told Merla the Queen had instructed them to show the guests to their rooms as soon as they arrived. So Trot followed two of them through several passages, after which they swam upward and entered a circular opening. There were no stairs here, because there was no need of them, and the little girl soon found herself in an upper room that was very beautiful indeed. All the walls were covered with iridescent shells, polished till they resembled mother of pearl, and upon the glass ceiling were clusters of the brilliant electric jellyfish, rendering the room bright and cheerful with their radiance. In one corner stood a couch of white coral, with gossamer draperies floating around it from the four high posts. Upon examining it, the child found the couch was covered with soft amber sponges, which rendered it very comfortable to lie upon. In a wardrobe, she found several beautiful gossamer gowns, richly embroidered in colored seaweeds, and these Mary was told she might wear while she remained the guest of the mermaids. She also found a toilet table with brushes, combs, and other conveniences, all of which were made of polished tortoiseshell. Really, the room was more dainty and comfortable than one might suppose possible in a palace far beneath the surface of the sea. And Trot was greatly delighted with her new quarters. The mermaid attendants assisted the child to dress herself in one of the prettiest robes, which she found to be quite dry and fitted perfectly. Then the maids brushed and dressed her hair and tied it with ribbons of cherry red seaweed. Finally, they placed around her neck a string of pearls that would have been priceless upon the earth. And now the little girl announced she was ready for supper and had a good appetite. Cap'n Bill had been given a similar room, near Trot's, but the old sailor refused to change his clothes for any others offered him, for which reason he was ready for supper long before his comrade.
"What bothers me, mate," he said to the little girl as they swam towards the great banquet hall where Queen Aquareine awaited them, "is why we ain't crushed by the pression of the water against us, being as we down here in the deep sea."
"How's that, Cap'n? Why should we be crushed?" she asked.
"Why, everybody knows that the deeper you go in the sea, the more the water presses 'gen you," he explained. "Even the divers in their steel jackets can't stand it very deep down. And here we be, miles from the top of the water, I 'spect, and we don't feel crowded a bit."
"I know why," answered the child wisely. "The water don't touch us, you see. If it did, it might crush us, but it don't. It always held a little way off from our bodies, by the magic of the fairy mermaids."
"True enough, Trot," declared the sailor man. "What an idiot I was not to think o' that myself."
In the royal banquet hall were assembled many of the mermaids, headed by the lovely queen, and as soon as their earth guests arrived, Aquareine ordered the meal to be served. The lobsters again waited upon the table, wearing little white caps and aprons which made them look very funny. But Trot was so hungry after her afternoon's excursion that she did not pay as much attention to the lobsters as she did to her supper, which was very delicious and consisted of many courses. Excuse me. A lobster spilled some soup on Cap'n Bill's bald head and made him yell for a minute because it was hot and he did not expect it. He had not expected it. But the queen apologized very sweetly for the awkwardness of her servants, and the sailors soon forgot all about the incident in his enjoyment of the meal. Excuse me. After the feast ended, they all went to the big reception room, where some of the mermaids played upon harps, while others sang pretty songs. They danced together, too, a graceful swimming dance, so queer to the little girl that it interested and amused her greatly. Cap'n Bill seemed a bit bashful among so many beautiful mermaids, yet he was pleased when the queen offered him a place beside her throne, where he could see and hear all the delightful entertainment provided for the royal guests. He did not talk much, being a man of few words except when alone with Trot, but his light blue eyes were big and round with wonder at the sights he saw. Trot and the sailor man went to bed early and slept soundly upon their sponge covered couches. The little girl never wakened until long after the sun was shining down through the glass roof of her room, and when she opened her eyes, she was startled to find a number of big, small, and middle sized fishes staring at her through the glass. "That's one bad thing about this mermaid palace," she said to herself. "It's too public. Everything in the sea can look at you through the glass as much as it likes. I wouldn't mind fishes looking at me if they hadn't such big eyes, and goodness me! There's a monster that's all head, and there goes a fish with a sail on its back, and here's old Murmur I'm sure, for he's got a head just like a pig." She might have watched the fishes on the roof for hours, had she not remembered it was late and breakfast must be ready. So she dressed and made her toilet, different meaning back then, and swam down to the palace to find Cap'n Bill and the mermaids politely waiting for her to join them. The sea maidens were as fresh and lovely as ever, while each and all proved sweet tempered and merry, even at the breakfast table. And that is where people are cross, if they ever are. During the meal, the queen said, "I shall take you this morning to the most interesting part of the ocean, where the largest and most remarkable sea creatures live. And we must visit King Anko too, for the sea serpent would feel hurt and slighted if I did not bring my guest to call upon him." "That'll be nice," said Trot eagerly, but Cap'n Bill asked, "Is there any danger, Mom?" "I think not," replied Queen Aquareine. "I cannot see that you will be exposed to any danger at all, so long as I am with you. But we are going into the neighborhood of some fierce and even terrible beings, which would attack you at once did they suspect you to be Earth people. So in order to guard your safety, I intend to draw the magic circle around both of you before we start." "What is the magic circle?" asked Trot. "A fairy charm that prevents any enemy from touching you. No monster of the sea, however powerful, will be able to reach your body while you are protected by the magic circle," declared the queen. "Oh, then I'll not be a bit afraid," returned the child with perfect confidence. "Am I to have the magic circle drawn around me too?" asked Cap'n Bill. "Of course," answered Aquareine. "You will need no other protection than that. Yet Princess Clea and I will both be with you, for today I shall leave Merla to rule our palaces in my place until we return." No sooner was breakfast finished than Trot was anxious to start. The girl was also curious to discover what the powerful magic circle might prove to be, but she was a little disappointed in the ceremony. The queen merely grasped her fairy wand in her right hand and swam around the girl in a circle from left to right. Then she took her wand in her left hand and swam around Trot in another circle from right to left. "Now, my dear," said she, "you are safe from any creature we are liable to meet." She performed the same ceremony for Cap'n Bill, who was doubtful about the magic circle, because he felt the same after it as he had before. But he said nothing of his unbelief, and soon they left the palace and started upon their journey. And we will stop there for now. Oh my goodness. Well, that was quite exciting, wasn't it? We'll move to our little chat room where we'll talk about the book and about next week. Oh, that was actually a lot of voices for that one. So very much I had to come up with quite a lot of different voices for that one. Julian 20, wonderful reading. Oh, thank you, thank you. I enjoy doing these readings for all you dear scholars. Union 20, thank you. No, thank you, scholars, for coming. You make this a wonderful time for me. Yeah, as was mentioned, I think Kintron mentioned it. L. Frank Baum, when he wrote this, you can really tell he tried to answer as much of the stories as possible. Um, Much of the questions that a child might come up with as possible. Like how do they eat under the water? How do they cook? How can they breathe underwater? That was an interesting idea. The fact that he doesn't go for the obvious, having the mermaids have gills, but rather like a magical air pocket is really kind of an interesting concept. Don't think other I think any other mermaid media goes in that direction. And the fact that he's equating the mermaids more with fairies than he is with any other sort of nautical creatures. I thought that was really interesting. Um, yeah, he put a lot of thought. L. Frank Baum, if you haven't read any of his other Oz books, he always puts a lot of thought into world creation. He is a marvelous world creator. All the places he creates, have a very unique feel to it, and the fact that he's tackling under the sea in this really interesting way, really developed and detailed. Yuli 20, they are really detailed. Yes, they are really detailed. He goes to the trouble of coming up with different personalities for all the fish. I thought it was rather clever that he does sneak in a bit of satire into the book, using the fish to demonstrate and make fun of different sorts of people with like little sides to the way people act on land, and using fish to sort of make fun of them. Like with the mackerel being this aristocratic, holier than thou sort of people. It wasn't the mackerel, was it? It was the codfish. The codfish. The mackerels were the ones who thought they were going to glory when they got the hook, which I almost want to think that he was very much suggesting something specific with that, but nothing that I want to really go into detail with. Um, Trot is such a delight to read. She is a very fun character. She's very different than Dorothy. Much more energetic and much more curious, which, since she's supposed to be younger than Dorothy, makes sense. She is a very, very curious child, seems like. What do you scholars think of the book? Do you have any thoughts on it? I shall open the floor up to you, dear scholars. Anything you like? Anything you found interesting? Union 20. Oh, I truly enjoy it. Yes, good to hear. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Good to hear. Good to hear. I mean, I want to find books that everyone enjoys. Anything you find particularly enjoyable? Anything you find particularly interesting? Sophia Ignazi. It's cool that he can smoke underwater. Yes, yes, and I thought the explanation was cool. Yes, the magic force field, really, and that is an interesting thing that they talk about it, and that Trot even goes into it where they're talking about like why doesn't the water pressure crush us? And I almost want to think that Baum wrote that part in quickly because he realized, oh, I had forgotten that. I forgot to mention that, like their teeth underwater. Oh, I forgot to mention the water pressure. Oh no. And the fact that it all boils down to this magic force field, which is what allows them to live under the water, which again is it's kind of an interesting concept because it makes the mermaids less. It makes the mermaids more magical and less just like regular fish people living under the sea. The One thing I really wish I could show you is the illustrations in this book. The illustrations for the Sea Fairies, as were a lot of L. Frank Baum's work, is done by John R. Nell? Neal, I think. That's how it's pronounced. John R. Neal, and they are gorgeous. If you have a chance, I suggest looking up some of his art for the Oz books or Sea Fairies. They are amazing pieces of art. And he actually later went on to he was the illustrator for the Oz books for a very long time, starting in the second book, which he wasn't the illustrator in the first book. I can't remember who was the illustrator in the first book, but starting in the second Oz book, he was the illustrator for Oz books later on, and they are some of the most gorgeous art you'll ever see. Um, and later on, much later on, he wrote some of the later Oz books, and I think he wrote two or three of them. And the thing most people remember about his, I think he wrote two books only. The thing most people remember about his Oz books is just how insane they were. They were some of the craziest, most over the top writings you will ever see in an Oz book. But that's beside the point. Yes. So I ran out of energy here. Oh my goodness. Um, Give me a second. You need 20. Imaginative. Well, I'll give an example actually. In one of the Oz books, on the Oz books he wrote, he describes houses standing upright on legs and getting into fistfights with each other, and that every object in Oz itself is living. So your shoes are alive, your house is alive, your clothes is alive. I know he basically took a concept that Baum sort of worked on. But he kind of expanded it in a really, really creepy way. Um, in a really chaotic, creepy way. And if you see the cover for, I think it's The Magic City of Oz, I think is the name of the book that the first book he wrote. The houses have mouths and eyes. Kind of weird. But the illustrations in the Sea Fairies is absolutely gorgeous. And in fact, every chapter cover has a little illustration at the very top, and they're wonderful ink drawings, wonderful paintings. Unfortunately, the copy I have does not have the the colored illustrations. Um, the books themselves had both black and white ink drawings and full page colored illustrations. Um, and so those were always really, really beautiful, really beautiful piece of artwork. Okay, so let me see. So about next week. Ah, yes, yes, I should talk about next week. Um, so next week, Tuesday, I am gonna put our Monkey Island stream on pause. I want to do a special gaming stream. Thing is, I haven't decided yet on what game, and I think I might leave it up to you scholars. I am torn between three games, and I think I should leave it up to you to pick it. So I will be putting a poll up on Twitter, and I would love to see you and you can vote on one of the three games, and we'll play whichever one of those three games on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we will continue with more chapters of the Sea Fairies. I'm so glad all you scholars could make it here today. Wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you to all our new scholars coming in for the first time. Mr. Smarties for coming in. Kin, I'm sorry, Kinelei. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing Kinlei for the follow. Thank you, thank you. And for our wonderful raiders, Kuro-sama and Crusader Corrupted, thank you, thank you, thank you. Much appreciated. I'm so glad you could make it. So I think tonight Sophia Ignace is reading, so we will raid her. So I say unto you, my dear scholars, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet once again in the study. Take care. I shall see you all next time. Bye bye.